Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Hedgebrook's Cottage Chat. It's luckily our second one of May. I love these conversations so much. I was just chatting with Vanessa and Kirsten backstage a little bit about how these are conversations on joy, and I have the honor of hosting them. And also amplifying the brilliant minds of our ever growing alumni community. Both of these women have amazing books coming out. I was just reading up on them, and they're going to talk a little bit about that. But really, I want them to talk about how they're connected. I don't know their connection story. And as many of you know, Hedgebrook Sisterhood goes deep. And so I'm really excited to lean in and learn more about how they connected and what how they support each other now. Um, please comment in the chat in the comments, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We love to hear it. We love to see it. We'll be able to see them and save them. And it's always so rewarding to know that you're out there, maybe getting a little bit something from this. My Hedgebrook alumna guests today, as you heard, are Vanessa Hua and Kirstin Chen. Kirsten's new novel, Counterfeit, is forthcoming from William Morrow HarperCollins in June 2022. So very, very soon. Her second novel, Bury What We Cannot Take, was named a best book of the season by Electric Literature, The Millions, The Rumpus, Harper's Bazaar, and InStyle. Just, a little lineup there. She's also the author of Soy Sauce for Beginners, which was the first book I picked up and read when I was in residency at Hedgebrook. Loved it. And she has received fellowships from the Steinbeck Fellows Program, Sewanee, Hedgebrook, and Jurassic, among others. Born and raised in Singapore, she lives in San Francisco. Also with us today is Vanessa Hua. She is an award-winning columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle and the author of the national bestseller, A River of Stars, as well as Deceit and Other Possibilities, winner of the Asian Pacific American Award for Literature and the forthcoming Forbidden City, which is how this all got started. Vanessa wanted to celebrate with us, and we were so glad that she had a fellow that she wanted to talk to. A National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellow. She has also received Rona Jaffe Foundation's Writers Award and the Steinbeck Fellowship in Creative Writing. Wait a minute, I'm seeing some crossover here. Wait a minute. As well, Steinbeck Fellowship in Creative Writing, as well as honors from the Society of Professional Journalists and the Asian American Journalists Association. She has filed stories from China, Burma, South Korea, Panama, and Ecuador, and her work has appeared Ecuador. Sorry, I just caught that myself. And her work has appeared in publications including the New York Times, Washington Post, and The Atlantic. She has taught most recently at the Warren Wilson MFA program for writers and the Sewanee's Writers Conference. Crossover again. I see ya. I see ya. The daughter of Chinese immigrants, she lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with her family. So these people are neighbors. Essentially, what we're going to hear is some joy between two people who really know each other. And I'm so excited that they're willing to share this with me. We will be right back because we have a little slide for you and some music. My name is Amber Flame, and I am the program director for Hedgebrook, as well as an alumna of their Writers in Residence program. I'm so thrilled to be your host for this conversation, which is streaming live Thursday, May 19th, 2022. Vanessa, I'm so glad that you brought Kirstin to my attention. I was like, wait a minute, why does that name sound familiar? And then I realized I loved your book. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. So I couldn't wait to tell you that. But really, I am so glad both of you are here today. I met Vanessa, met Vanessa. I haven't yet officially met Vanessa. Right shortly after I started at Hedgebrook as program director in 2020, she was slated to do a radical craft retreat, formerly known as master classes. And then COVID lockdown happened. And we decided to try something and pivot to a virtual version. And she was ready. She was ready and willing, and had great suggestions to setting it up. I had already begun teaching virtually, so felt good about that. And it was phenomenal. She was just actually letting us know, letting me know. I didn't know that you knew and you were hearing from your students of that radical craft retreat still, but
Oh
they
yeah,
still
definitely.
meet.
Yes, yes.
So
They even have a name for themselves, Literary AF, to fill in
nice.
what
Oh,
the
that's
AF is.
great.
Yes.
Awesome. That's so cool. So we were talking a little bit. You both stayed in Meadow House, so not together.
Mm-mm.
So you were at Hedgebrook at different times. How did you meet?
Gosh, we go back a long way, don't we?
Yes. Although I feel like the first time it was like we probably saw each other at Bay Area literary events or like Ziziva parties.
Yeah.
And then I remember you came to read from your first novel at the San Jose State University because I was a Steinbeck fellow then, and
You were a
you had
Steinbeck Fellow a
just
year after me, I think.
right.
Okay.
Well,
So
and
we've
in fact, right, and in fact, the fellows next year, Reese, Kwan, and Yalitza, we were at dinner with them when they got the phone call. So it was like
Oh, cool.
we're
the
all Bay Area writers, and I feel like it's a very tight knit community, and it's small, so you run into each other at events. And then uh, Vanessa and I were at Swanee together last
Okay.
year.
Okay.
And then this year, with our books coming out at almost the same time, we're just like constant. She's my kind of constant sounding board for all things. And so I feel like I'm
Wow.
in constant contact with her.
yes,
You all okay, sorry. Do you
of
all
the
write
same.
together or not?
We haven't yet, but I do want to add that we were also in a karaoke book club.
That's true.
What is the karaoke book club?
So it was formed by writers Beth Wynn and Amy Fawn, and Amy has also been to Hedgebrook.
Nice.
And there was a thought
Yeah.
we should read the Ferrante quartet together, and so we would proceed through each book. The sort of because so much of those books are about becoming a writer or being a woman and autonomy, and then we would gossip, talk about the books, and then sing it all on out at karaoke.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the
And
only book club I've been a member of, and I can never join another book club again. And also Reese Kwan was part of it, and shout out to her because I know she's here.
Yeah.
yes, yeah, I know there were several. Those were sort of the core, and then there were other members that would come in and out, and it was it was a lot of fun, and we met online during the pandemic to read Ferrante's Lying Life of Adults, and we also were able to go sing karaoke once in person. So we found our ways to keep up even despite the pandemic.
Virtually. Yeah. We found the virtual vibe.
Yeah.
I think some of my best friendships kind of like solidified and grew because of the lockdown. Like my tightest crew is one that met right before and then, talked regularly for 2 years in a way that we probably wouldn't if we were like literally next door to each other,
Yeah.
So interesting.
Your circle kind of shrinks a little bit, but then also gets really close and really tight. And so I feel the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been listening to this mantra that says my circle has like a lowercase o, and I love it here. I don't know where here is. You're getting some wonderful love. Reese is hearting your book club. So because you have, so Vanessa's book Forbidden City just dropped, and this is for both of you the one that you put out or are putting out like post-pandemic essentially. So I want to talk a little bit about that experience for you, but really, can we talk about the books that are coming out? So yours is coming out in June, right, Kirstin?
Yes, June 7th.
Okay. June 7th. Oh, so very soon. Oh, I love it. Thank you for letting us celebrate with you. Congratulations to you both. It's so awesome. And very different stories. Very different reasons, I would say, for writing. How long have you been working on, like, this is for both of you. How long have you been working on this book? Does it feel like a continuation of something? Like, I'm just curious what this experience has been for you.
Well, I will say this: our books are about characters in different eras, but they all are strong-willed women finding their way through. So I think there's that in common. But my novel I began writing in 2007,
Okay.
Finished the final touches last year, which does mean there were lots of twists and turns along the way that Kirstin was part of hearing about along the way. Essentially, it came close to selling in 2009, but didn't. It was devastating. But I just had to keep going, and I worked on Deceit and Other Possibilities and A River of Stars. But in between projects, if I had the manuscript out with other people for feedback, I kept returning to Forbidden City and to May, the main character of my novel, who is the teenage protege and lover of Chairman Mao, who becomes a poster child for the Cultural Revolution. Yeah, but I spent 14 years on the book, nearly a third of my life, and I found out I had just sold the book based on its first 50 pages right before I arrived at Hedgebrook. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so I worked on the manuscript because I knew it had to be rewritten yet again while at Meadow House. So
nice.
For me, my book had maybe a relatively conventional path. This is the galley, if anyone wants to see the cover. Yeah, I do love it. I started writing this book in 2017, and so for me, this is pretty quick for a novel. And I think part of it was I wrote a lot of it in a kind of post-Trumpian rage after the election. I had actually taken a writer in residency position in Singapore because I was considering moving home post-election, and this book was really kind of born out of that. Even though you probably wouldn't guess that on the surface. I mean, it's a novel about two Asian American women who band together to grow a counterfeit handbag scheme into a global enterprise. But at its heart, it's a book for me that asks, what does it mean to be a woman of color in America? What does it mean to live with the model minority myth hanging over you? What does it mean to pursue the American dream as a woman of color? And so in some ways, the pandemic was like a relatively productive time just because I had this project kind of fueling me. And so I'm very grateful for that.
So we know the world is trash fire right now and continues to be, that the slight relief that came for a moment by a continuing trash fire. And I just, it's striking me how it's difficult right now to access that joy. And really, I'm thinking more the words that came to me were protect your peace. So I'm wondering what you've done to protect your peace and really to protect your characters and your book and yourself as a creative during this time with there's just so much. There's the huge rise of anti-Asian hate. All of there's so much going on right now, and I think one of the ways I told my coworker, I was like, I feel like I'm ostriching right now. Like I'm just making that a verb now. I'm just like I can't intake any more right now. And in these moments, I find that it's sometimes hard to turn to the page, sometimes hard to turn to the creativity, or even to just access the joy. So what do you do to protect your peace?
Well, it's interesting. Ostensibly, my book is set in 1960s China on the eve of the Cultural Revolution, but readers have said that this book reminds them so much about what we're going through now collectively. These questions of bodily autonomy, about the power dynamics between younger women and older men. And I'm glad that people, on one hand, you may think, oh, a book is an escape, but on the other hand, it's a valuable way to reconsider our present. So I'm glad that Forbidden City has provided that outlet for some people. But in terms of my own joy, and Kirstin knows about this and has sampled some of my treats, I became a forager during the pandemic. And
do you follow Black Forager?
Yes, I interviewed her for Outside Magazine.
I thought so. Okay, I was like, I think I saw that. I saw it.
Yeah, she is not only full of joy, but just so insightful about sort of the history and context and the larger way we can see the world, whether that's through cycles of time or sort of the history that underpins everything that we too often forget. So right now, I had miner's lettuce in late winter, early spring, and right now I'm eyeing there's some loquats ripening at a tree down the street, and the plums are green, but I'm getting very excited for them. And yes, I also this afternoon I went for a swim. That's my piece. I think when I try to do yoga, and this will be funny because Kirstin's a yoga extraordinaire, but I think when I'm doing corpse pose, I'm like, my mind is already like, I gotta get going. Whereas with swimming, I'm in it. I'm dunked. I can't. I resist the urge to get up from the class and leave. So
Nice.
swimming and foraging, I highly recommend it.
I was just asking one of our chefs, I was like, do you want to teach us a little bit of like basic foraging? I mean, Hedgebrook is just loaded with goodies
Berries
outside
everywhere.
the garden.
Yeah.
Outside the garden, like there's just, fruit just falling from trees. So, and I learned about persimmons. Persimmons? Persimmons?
You're right.
Persimmons? Which ones?
which make an appearance in my book. Yeah.
Yes, right. So I learned about them just last year for the first. I grew up in the desert, so I had no context for fruit trees that were not ornamental oranges or lemon trees, and just the abundance out there. And I think she just posted about a lilac fizzy drink recipe.
Oh, that sounds good.
Doesn't that sound delicious? And it was so funny. I watched one with my kid, and it was she was talking about what grape hyacinth were. And I just it opens your eyes to realize like you're surrounded by not just beauty and these delicious smelling flowers and everything as spring is happening, but like also like true food abundance and how freeing that could be, like how much freedom could be in truly leaning into and learning how to feed yourself from the land, and not from the land that you cultivate, but like from
the land that should be there for everyone to share. And
exactly. That is there for everyone to share.
Right. And,
if you
and
have
that in fact,
access.
like trespass laws were aimed at being in the wake of the Civil War. It was anti-Black, anti-Native, Native American. So the things that exist today has roots in things that we need to understand, and that's what Alexis Nicole Nelson, Black Forager, does so well with her work on social media.
Yes, yes, we dropped the interview in the comments. Please check it out. It's great. And she has just these short little videos that are totally doable. And that's the other thing is accessibility. I don't think anybody's ever put it. I think that's what's partly like resonating is that you feel like you could do it. You don't feel like you don't have access to that or something, How about you, Kirstin? How are you protecting your
I just
space?
wanted to say that I've had Vanessa's foraged acorn flour cookies. For the acorn flour, they were really good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think so. Right. I made some jam out of some foraged hawthorn berries, and I made some bay nut chocolates for you.
Bay nut chocolates. I remember that as well. The truffles. Yeah. For me, like writing was actually a real solace throughout the pandemic. I think that, when my university where I teach at went online and all our social gatherings went online, writing was so strangely the only thing that felt exactly the same as pre-pandemic. For me, I don't write in coffee shops. I've always written in this room that I'm in right now in complete silence. And so it was actually such a comfort to come and work here because it felt like, that was the one thing that I could kind of lean on that felt exactly the same. And I will say that I think that so much of the kind of solace and comfort that I get from writing, I actually learned at Hedgebrook. Prior to coming to Hedgebrook, I was a writer who really prided myself on my discipline and my grit, and I was just like really good at pushing myself, and that's how I wrote my first novel. Like I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm so determined. And then I got to Hedgebrook, and for the first time, there was no need for discipline. And I actually think it's the first time that I woke up excited to write. And I really realized that I had never really felt that because I was so focused on like getting my word count and like getting the pages. And it was really revolutionary. And I think, like after I left, I think about all the time, like you hold on to that joy. Like, this is such a great job that I have, and I can't think of anything better that I'd want to be doing. And it makes me just feel so lucky and so happy and so grateful. And I learned that from all of you.
So awesome. So, okay, I believe in synchronicity. I pay attention to, especially by the time something happens twice, I'm already looking for the third one. You know what I mean? Which might also mean that I manifest the third one, but I'm cool with that. So, I look for times when things like sync up, or like I'm hearing the same phrase or very similar phrase. And just today, um, stepping back, stepping back into some Hedgebrook work, and Jen sent me a interview with Ashley C. Ford, who we did a cottage chat with last week. Um, she was interviewing Trisha Hersey, the Nap Bishop. Do you know about the Nap Ministry?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
yes, in the churches where
Yes.
the pews are open during the day for the homeless.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. This is Trisha Hersey is Atlanta-based, an Atlanta-based artist and writer and theologian, and she has started this thing called the Nap Ministry. And I think y'all should know about this. Her premise is that rest is resistance. Anyway,
Okay.
the
Oh.
thing is like, and she's a theologian, so she's a nap bishop, and she leads like resting experiences, especially for Black women. There's so many things that she's doing. She's putting out a book soon, and so Ashley was talking to her about this book, but also so many other things. And one of the things she said, Kirsten, that you said something that just was like, oh my gosh, as she was Trisha was talking about being in school, and being so exhausted, and like, just like keeping herself awake and working and working and working. And then when she started resting and doing it on purpose, like everything changed.
Mhm.
She started getting better grades. She started, being more successful in her classes. Like it was where she thought she was going to need to drop out, because she just started falling. She started going to sleep everywhere. She would like,
Mhm.
be in the
Mhm.
library and be like, I'm gonna put my head and go to sleep in the library instead of studying. And it's a really, really great interview. It's on Instagram. Oh, and Jen is awesome.
There it
Dropped it
is.
in the
Yeah.
chat. Thank you, Jen. You should check it out, because and she doesn't write about self-care, she writes about community care. And I think that's so there's so many resonances. I just watched it earlier today as like a way of setting my mind up for this conversation. And look at, you're talking about both the connections, the like community that you've gathered,
Yeah.
and you're also that idea of like, this is where I find solace. And if I allow myself to not think of it as a grind,
Mhm.
the thing that caught me when the Nat Bishop posted a meme that said, we are not, our bodies are not machines, we are not meant to grind.
Mhm.
And I thought about like the literal, like the grinding in my knee.
Yeah.
And just how we're like, that's not good. It's not
Mhm.
good that there's no cartilage there to protect, like we're not meant to grind down. So to like shift your perspective, and how like it opened it up, and it happened so quickly, and it brought this like ease to it.
Mhm.
And then that ended up sustaining you through
Mhm.
something really horrific and global.
Mhm.
So I just love that. Sorry, I went on a little tangent there, because I'm like, oh my gosh, synchronicity. And you all should absolutely check out the interview. But I would love to talk about a little bit, how do you community care, since it came up, like that's what I'm hearing you have fostered in these different situations where your paths have crossed. You're also in the same neighborhood. What does community care mean and look like to you?
I mean, it could take the form of a group text
Mm,
where I'm saying feels strange to me. How am I reading this correctly? And then getting a read on that and
mm,
suggestions. Or I remember I was having some health issues, and Reese and Kirsten and some others sent me out of the blue this beautiful kit of bath stuff and sprays,
oh,
and just I know we're all apart right now, but it felt, I felt seen and cared
mm,
for. So
Yeah, I think we're so lucky here in the Bay Area. Vanessa, Reese, we have like a really tight group of Asian American women writers. And I would say that, I moved from Boston where I was in graduate school, and I had tons of, obviously I was in graduate school, so I had a tight community. but I didn't realize how important it was to know other Asian American women writers until I got to the Bay Area. I didn't know what I was missing, but I mean, there's just things that we navigate in academia, in publishing, that not everybody has to deal with or can relate to. And so that has been such a gift, you know, to be able to just say, like, does anybody have a cover letter I can look at that you know, has anybody had experience interviewing for particular things? I mean, I think in our community, and not just with the Asian American, you know, with a lot of our writer friends, you know, we pass on opportunities, we recommend each other for things that is, you know, if you can't make it, you know, recommend a friend. If they're asking for, you know, book clubs often ask, what books are coming out that you want to read? You know, we're kind of, we know what's coming out because we're all writers. And so it's just a really lovely, it's a lovely community to be a part of. It's something that I didn't know I was missing until I found it.
Yeah.
Nice. And I really do think it is about uplifting others and helping ease the way for others as they enter the community. And because I'm mindful of those who did that for me. And it feels, you know, seeing generosity of spirit in others, it just reminds you or kindles that in yourself as well.
For sure. Generosity. This reminds me of a question. I love to ask this question too. I've asked this a couple of times in different cottage chats, and it's often comes down to like, share what you know. But what is one thing or the one thing you wish you had known at the beginning of the journey? You know, like youth is wasted on the young kind of thing. Like if I only knew then what I knew now.
So many things, Flame.
But like, what is something that was like, that could have saved me so much heartache? Or and let's talk about like because you both are bringing these books into the world. What is something about publishing or the finished product into the world piece that you figured out or somebody finally clued you into and you wish you had known all along? Anything? Or
I mean,
it doesn't have to be the most important thing.
I mean, you know, for me, one thing that comes to mind is just to not be in such a rush. You know, when I was putting out my first book, this was 2014. I think I was, how old was I? Maybe 33, maybe, or 32 when the book came out. Which to me now, I'm like, that was so young. Like, but I just felt like I would die if the book didn't, you know, if somebody didn't buy it, if the book wasn't published. It really, like, every stage in that initial publishing process felt like do or die. Like, this is the one thing that could make me never write again. And I did honestly believe it at that time, you know, like, oh, if this agent doesn't like this book, I will never write again. If this editor doesn't buy it, I will never write again. And what was the rush, you know? You know, like, it just felt so urgent at the time. And now I think back, and if it had come out 3 years later, you know, it would have been the same book. Maybe it would have been a better book. You know, it was the pressure that I put on myself, you know?
Wow. Vanessa, I don't know that I got the vibe that you agree with.
No, it's true. And I think this is something Kirstin and I have talked about, that actually each time each of our books has come out, the publishing and publicity landscape has been completely different. So just as every time you write a new book, you're learning how to write that book, with bringing a book out into the world, it's been completely different each time. And I guess I'm trying to think. I've been mulling over this, like, what do I wish I had known? But maybe it's more, I mean, when I was in the wilderness working on this book for 14 years, it would have been nice to hear, you will get published. But would I have believed it? And could I have stomached that it would take 14 years to write? And I think sometimes it's better not to know, because, you know, you keep the faith, you keep going. And maybe the lesson from all of this is just that, echoing what Kirstin was saying, that is like, that thing that seems like your last chance probably isn't. That if that meeting doesn't go well, or if you don't wow someone in some reading, that there's no one thing that is going to determine what your book is or your success. So, and understanding that while you should still be prepared and, write the book that you need to write, just understand that there's factors outside of your control, and that it's not useful to get hung up on things that in the end are only just one part of your writing journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And also that publishing is just a blip in the writing life. I think about that all the time because I'm kind of in the thick of it right now and it feels all consuming. But like in the 5 years that it took to write this book, the publishing part is, a small percentage of it. And I often feel like I train my whole life in order to weather the kind of vagaries of, like I do yoga every day. I meditate every day. I eat really healthy. I try to take care of myself so that I can withstand the kind of, I don't want to call it poison, but it is.
Call it poison, but it is.
I wouldn't call it poison, but I think it can bring out your lesser instincts because there's so much pressure.
Your reptilian brain.
Yes. And so, one of my mantras is just like, you've practiced for this, like you've kind of learned to sort of rise above the roller coaster of it all. I remember reading Murakami's, he had a memoir called What We Talk About When We Talk About Writing. It's kind of little essays. And he said, writing novels is very unhealthy work. And so I try to be as healthy as I can in my life so that I can do this unhealthy work. And I didn't understand it at the time, but that's a little bit how I feel about the publishing process, even though I'm so grateful for the journey that I've had and felt very lucky in so much of what I've experienced. I do feel that, be healthy in the rest of my life so that I can weather this period.
Going to bed early is the new sleeping in.
Yes.
You are giving us so many wonderful quotes. I mean, the publishing is just a blip in your writing life. I love that. We do put so much weight on. You reminded me of a country song, Vanessa. I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance. I'm glad I didn't know how it all would end, or I might not have done it. And
just one other thing that I've been thinking about. I think Kirstin and I both come off to other people as extroverts, but obviously some other part of us enjoys being by ourselves for long stretches of the day. So. Yeah. It's a reminder to continue filling our tank in the ways that we need to, as exciting or as rewarding it is to go out and start meeting readers.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I love this. Okay, so the thing you thought was your last chance wasn't. That's a gem right there. It wasn't your last chance. And I think that, you made me think of mental health. You made me think of relationships. Made me think of connections with people, job opportunities. Not outside of the creative life, but what you thought was your last chance wasn't. That was really beautiful. It's just a blip in your writing life. It's not even the point of your writing life. I think is wonderful. And this idea of going and taking a chance on yourself and taking care of yourself while doing that, like prioritizing, taking care of the vessel that you're using to funnel all of this into the world is just a beautiful, foundational truth. I think we're all trying to lean into it, but I love that you've made that the point, right? I have to do this so that I can do this instead of, well, I'd like to find a balance. I feel like I do that a lot. I'd like to find a balance in my life. But to make
it could be, we're both in our 40s. I'm older than Kirstin, but I think it
comes in the 40s, huh?
It comes in the
Okay, I'm coming into it then. I did feel some of the fucks roll off my shoulders.
Right, exactly.
When I hit 40, and a little bit more roll off at 41. So I'm gonna be. I think okay, just lean into that too. I got it. Okay, so I would love to talk about joy for a little bit. We've already heard how you maintain, I think, your joy and your protection of your peace. But tell me about a good belly laugh. I asked this last time and I was like, oh, I like that one. Remember maybe the last time you really just chuckled? Tell me, who was there? What happened? Was it a joke? Oh,
What was that, Vanessa? What were
No,
you
I'm just
thinking?
thinking of something we texted about earlier.
I was like, I'm
Not right
constantly
now.
laughing on text with Vanessa, so it's hard for me to remember.
Well, or so I have 10-year-old twins, and
Mhm.
I remember they dropped me off to Hedgebrook when I was on the land, and they, it was a big thing to be away from them, and they were I don't know, just toddlers then, and now they're 10. But I mean, they make me laugh every day, just in terms of full on belly laughs because of the way they see the world, or just they are very blunt. And I think it's not only funny, but it also makes me re-examine why I see the world the way that I do, or should I?
Nice.
Yeah. Mine is much less sweet. I had a full-on belly laugh when I was watching Made for Love last night, which is a great show. Do you watch that?
I tried.
Oh, it's so weird. It's so weird. But if you stick with it, if it sticks, I don't know, it kind of has wormed its way into my heart. But yes, Vanessa makes me laugh a lot on text. So we're constantly exchanging texts and laughing. I will say my partner has a job that is not at all related to writing. He's a cancer researcher. He researches pediatric cancer. And I think he has such a delight he has such a delightful attitude to any of my writing successes, which I think when you're a writer, you get very jaded about things, and you're like, oh, another review, another blah, another, and you're like, oh, it's not that big a deal. And because we're not in the same field, he's like, no, it's a big deal. This is great. And it's lovely to have that kind of reminder. And then also his job also puts my job in perspective because of how important in a kind of real world sense his work is. But that brings me a lot of joy, his delight.
Nice.
Yes, we need civilians. So
yes.
Who else would read it? We can't sit around reading each other's work all the time. We saw it in draft form.
Although, we do read another thing is Vanessa and I do actually read each other's. We're kind of each other's early readers. And this is one thing that brings me joy, is that I've told Vanessa this. I feel like she somehow is my exact target audience, like just in terms of what she likes to read, what she's interested in, her kind of background knowledge, because we write a lot about Asian Americans living in America, or, historically, both of us are part of the Chinese diaspora. And I feel so joyful and lucky that I found this reader who was like exactly who I had in mind. I didn't even know it.
Nice.
Or I think we both were like, if we die before the manuscript is complete,
the other person has to complete it.
Yes.
I love that. That's great.
But because there is a moment in a long project where you're like, if I die,
don't let it die with me.
Yes. I said to my partner, take this to Vanessa. If I die.
Final instructions.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. That's great. Vanessa, when you cracked up, I was like, oh, I could see. We get you really laughing, and it would be a whole experience. That's awesome. Okay, so I want to turn a little bit. I want you to brag on yourself a little bit about about these books that are coming out. What have you done that you've never done before, or what have you done that you ain't seen happen yet and you did it? Or what did you call from your own creativity and skill and dedication and intention that you're just really proud of with these books?
Oh, that's such a lovely question. I don't think I've ever been asked that.
Awesome.
Did you want me to go first, Vanessa?
Yeah, you can go. I don't. Yeah.
I was thinking.
Yeah, I think with every book I've written, I hit a point where I think I've written myself into a problem that I can't solve. With every, and I've done this 3 times, and every book, and it hits a point where it's like, okay, I'm just not going to be able to figure this out. I may have to abandon this project. And now because it's my 3rd book, I know that when I hit that point, it's because it's the exact book that I need to be working on. Do you know what I mean? Because like, I know that it's the book that's going to stretch me as a writer. and I kind of have to rise to the occasion in order to solve the problem. And so I definitely hit that, several times I thought this book was done, many times. Thanks to my wonderful editor, Jessica Williams at William Morris. She was relentless. And she was like, try one more time. It's not quite right. And several times I said, I think this is the best I can do. And she was like, just try one more time. This was at Swanee when Vanessa and I were there together. And I was kind of working on the side because I was supposed to be done with my book before I went, but I was late because I couldn't solve this problem. I did eventually, I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts. I did actually cross the line, but it's a kind of beautiful thing. In some sense, I always think of a novel as a problem that I created for myself. Like, it's almost like I'm solving a crossword puzzle, except I also wrote the crossword puzzle and I made it really, really hard. And for some reason, I can't solve it. And so it's a problem I created for myself. And there's something so satisfying about being able to cross the line and figuring it out.
Word. That's lovely. I love that. A novel is a puzzle I created for myself. I love that.
Well, definitely, we do this to ourselves. Something that I also remind myself. And there was, in the journey of writing the novel, there was a moment where I realized who my narrator is addressing, a very specific audience. And I didn't realize that until after the sale of the book, so deep into the lifespan of the book. But once I realized that, there was a feeling of a key sinking into a lock and tumblers falling. And that is such a satisfying feeling. And one that I think authors are continually chasing after. What is it that our subconsciousness is trying to tell us all along that we can find our way into, whether that's, maybe it's, for me, it's sometimes when I'm swimming and when I'm away from the computer and the thing that I'm been struggling with the most suddenly arrives. Like, it feels like a gift every time. But just in terms of,
but a gift you gave yourself.
The gift you gave yourself. The problem you created for yourself and the gift you gave.
But I mean, there's something really special about that,
Yeah.
Indeed.
And and just even with this Forbidden City, it was originally supposed to come out in mid-April, then supply chain issues, then late April, then it suddenly was May, and then the day of the big launch event, my interlocutor wasn't feeling well, and Kirstin was going to step in if she needed to, but then we figured out a way to beam him in like max headroom, and just every curveball. And huge thanks to Booksmith and to Oscar Villalone, who was my interlocutor, but I feel like it came off. And what was also really special is I belong to the Writers Grotto in San Francisco, and unbeknownst to me, they got a plan together where everyone wore 2 braids, like the cover of the book. It was Braid so Brigade. So
Braid Brigade.
It was a night where I think I mentioned it that night that when you get married, it's very special because everyone you love from different parts of your life are together. And I felt that same way again that night. And then in the weeks that followed, just the well wishes that people have and support I felt throughout this process is just, it feels, it's wonderful to reconnect in that way after what the pandemic has wrought.
That's beautiful. And Booksmith in San Francisco, yes?
Yes.
I love that bookstore. I did my book launch there with Arisa White, who's another Hedgebrook alum.
Oh, Arisa's
awesome. You know Arisa too, right? Because she was in the Bay. She moved shortly, I think shortly after I moved back to the Pacific Northwest. So yeah, we met there, and you're right. There's a beautiful community. There's some beautiful places of support, and they have. I love a place that has a whole bunch of people who want to show up for whatever they're doing because they've developed that reputation, and I think Booksmith is one of those. Their series, their like people are always awesome. So I love that you said it felt like the wedding when people from all the different walks of life show up for you. Right?
And Kirstin's launch is there. If anyone watching from the Bay Area, go.
So on June 7th or
June 8th.
On June 8th. So Counterfeit comes out June 7th.
Mhm.
and that means that you can pre-order it, I'm sure, by now.
Yes, you can get
Um,
signed copies at the Booksmith.
ooh, and
For
then
both of us.
yep,
And if you order
Yep.
both books, it'll be free shipping.
look at that. We'll both be there on June 8th at Booksmith in
Yeah.
San Francisco. And I know we have a whole bunch of alum, a whole bunch of community in the Bay Area.
Mhm.
So please consider showing up. Y'all, thank you so much. I smiled a lot. My cheeks actually hurt. I was like, oh, my cheeks a little sore from grinning. And Vanessa, it was so great to see just throw your head back and laugh like that. Thank you for these bon mots, these wonderful things that you have said. I love being able to go back and listen and like learn again and pay attention. Um, awesome. So the event for the June 8th is in the chat. Um, Vanessa, what is your touring plan? Where can they see you doing readings, taking workshops? And then Kirsten, I'm gonna ask you the same.
Yeah, I have events all through the mid-June and beyond. I'll Oakland Library this weekend, Literary Deathmatch next week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, UC Riverside. I'll be in Denver teaching at the Lighthouse Lit Fest. I'm teaching a class at Hugo House virtually about writing across cultures.
Mhm.
So if folks just want to check me out at my website,
There it is.
www.vanessahua.com, there'll be lots of details for both virtual and in-person events.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really just a tee up so we can make sure to drop your website in the comments. Please do check it out. I know from lots of wonderful testimonials that Vanessa is a hold it down teacher. You're going to learn a shit ton to use a technical term. How about you, Kirsten?
I just posted my tour poster
Beautiful.
on social media. I'm going to start in San Francisco, and then we're going to LA, to Boston, DC, and New York. So if anybody is in those places, would love to see you. And then back in the Bay Area, I think Vanessa and I have 2 events together in August. One at the San Francisco Public Library, and then one at the Ruby that we're currently putting together. So
Yeah.
Please make sure to let us know so that we can help amplify that on social media. So you'll be hearing from Hedgebrook too, but also you should follow these people because they're awesome. I'm really actually, okay, I love historical fiction so much. And the problem with what I have found from the few attempts at the specific era that you're writing in, Vanessa, is that it's inaccessible. It's been inaccessible to me because I don't have enough like historical context. Like I felt like I had to go learn about what really happened so that I could enjoy the historical fiction of what happened. And even just beginning your book, I was like, oh, this is good. Like I'm so invested in the character. And I mean, just the premise is just like already fascinating, right? Like this idea of this I don't know, it's much more intimate and it doesn't get too lost in the politics of it that I can't follow it unless I know kind of thing. And I just thank you for writing this. I'm really excited. And Kirsten, I already said I love your writing. I was immediately drawn to your book. I love the cover of this new one too. And I'm super excited to cop your book and hopefully see you both on the land sometime soon.
Yes,
Love
I would
that.
love that.
Yes, I would
Even
love that
just
too.
talking to you, Flame, is making me long for your voice is so soothing.
Oh, thank you.
I'm longing
Thank you.
to build a
Yeah.
fire and have a basket full of chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you are getting the alumni newsletter, but there's an invitation in one
Oh,
of them.
yes.
So,
Yeah.
consider you're close enough.
Yeah,
Consider.
it's true.
Um,
It's true.
But also, let's talk about how to build more things for Hedgebrook and for our community. You have been so generous, and thank you so much for your time. Yes, please support both of them. Their books are exciting. They're so exciting, and I'm super happy for you. I'm happy for you both. After 14 years, Vanessa, it's there. It's done. You can stop weighing on
He's
your mind.
alive.
He's alive. And if I'm sure Vanessa would love the braid brigade to continue. So you can throw them up, and I had 2 braids the other day. I might send you a picture. It'll be the back of my head because they don't hang down yet, but we'll get there. Thank you both so much, and thank you all for joining us. Let's see. I'm gonna do my little outro real quick. And Kirsten, and Vanessa, please stay on just a minute so that I can thank you in depth and personally. Thank you, Vanessa and Kirsten, for joining me. If you want to revisit this conversation or share it with someone, you can find the video on Hedgebrook's YouTube channel, and the audio version will soon be available wherever you find podcasts. This series is presented free of charge to our community and is supported by donations from listeners like you. As an act of radical reciprocity, if you make a donation today, we'll enter you in a raffle for a ticket to the kickoff event for our inaugural Writers Conference in September. I'm super excited about this conference. Check out our social media, check out our website. It's a really, really amazing program that we're putting together for intermediate and advanced writers, as well as open to public and to the community. It's in September, or you can get $25 off your full conference registration if you're coming as a writer. I am Amber Plain, Program Director, Hedgebrook. So thrilled to be, so honored to be. And I want to encourage you not to miss our next Cottage Chat on Thursday, June 16th at 4 p.m. We will have Claire Dieterer and Julie Phillips also celebrating some new work coming out.